Right. Father, we pause to thank you for this, what felt like a beautiful summer day in early October. I thank you for everybody in this room, elected officials, as well as employees and citizens. I ask now that as we look at tonight's agenda, several items are going to have a great impact on not only the almost 200 employees for the city, but also the taxpayers. And I just ask that we seek your spirit. We have sharp minds, we have humble hearts as we work through the agenda this evening. It's in Christ's name that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jeff. Let the minutes reflect all council members are present. With that, let's look at the approval of the minutes from the September 18th meeting. I'll ask if there's any additions or corrections to the minutes.
I'll make a motion we approve as presented.
Thank you, Josh. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Cindy, thanks. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Again, welcome to our visitors tonight. Good to see our friends from Wymet. Anyone else? Mike Reagan, good to see you. With that, Lynn, anything from item 3, reports, oral and written communications?
I don't have anything.
All right, thank you. So with that, we will move on to unfinished business. Ordinance 2023-1002. This is a second reading of our budget, the 2024 appropriations and tax rates. If you remember last month, we had a public hearing. The forms were all presented. You all passed unanimously, as we've done in the past, knowing that we have up until the 1782 notice is presented, and then we have so many days after that's presented to make further cuts. So with that, this is pretty much the start of the budgeting process. Nothing can be raised after this, but certainly there can be cuts made, and we will look at that as we get closer to the calculations of the DLGF on our final tax rate. So with that, are there any questions or any concerns?
I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2023-1002 on second and final reading.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jerry, you won.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further final comments or discussion? Lynn, do you have anything to add? I know you all have worked hard to get us to this point. We've all worked hard. Again, the process of budgeting is 7 months, it seems, out of the year, and we take this seriously. Obviously, we used our Baker Tilly Comprehensive Financial Plan as a guideline, and we're looking at probably a small increase in the rate, but also that hopefully will be less than some by a broadening of our assessed value in our tax base, which is something we've been able to do for some time. But the final numbers will start to become more apparent as we get closer to that, again, the 1782 notice.
My only comment is that you have to sign this. Everybody has to sign it so don't run off.
All right. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Ordinance 2023-1002 passes on second reading. All right. Item 2, new business. Item 1 is a public hearing tonight. This is ordinance 2023-1001. This is a request from Wymet for a vacation of some streets on their campus. I think you've all seen the maps, and I think Justin will present tonight and give you a little bit, answer your questions on this. We'll hold our public hearing and hopefully render a decision. Justin?
Yeah, so for the most part, I'll give you an introduction to the petitioner, and they can maybe explain some of the whys and some of the questions you may have. But if there are any questions you have from a planning standpoint, I'd be happy to answer those. We did review the request internally with the city engineer and the various departments just to make sure there was no long-term use that we could foresee for these road spurs. They're unimproved, basically have functioned as part of Wymet's parking lot for the last, I don't even know how many years. So they've never been turned into a road, and they're actually blocked on the east side by a railroad, which would make it very difficult to turn them into roads or use them for utilities in the future. So we didn't see any compelling reason for the city to not relinquish ownership of these roadways to Wymet for their consolidation of their parcel. So.
And just for clarity, the property on either side is Wymet property, correct?
Correct.
On both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? All right, I believe the petitioner is represented tonight. You'd introduce yourself, and we'd be happy to hear from you.
Rob Kruger, 200 East Main Street, Suite 1000, Fort Wayne, Indiana, here for Wymet Properties. As Mr. Taylor said, these are two old platted streets from the Shore Acres plat that, like many old streets, never got improved or used. It was discovered during title work and surveys that they're in the middle of the parking lot. And so for future title purposes, we just want to clean that up and get these vacated. I doubt we have any remonstrators here, but, the elements of remonstrance under the statute are, would vacating this hinder anybody's way to get, where they need to get going, or hinder the way to a school or public place? And obviously, these streets don't serve really any real function, and they're cut off at the railway line. So I'm happy to take any questions. We did have a private utility locate company go out there, and there are no utilities in here, except along Detroit. So we didn't seek to have the utilities waive any rights, because we don't think there are any in there.
So no easements on these properties as well?
No, not within the areas we're vacating, yeah. No utility easements, so.
All right. Questions?
Well, for one, I worked out there at that plant for 44 years and never knew that either one of those roads was out there. The one of them, of course, is Roosevelt, and I lived on Roosevelt Street out here on the east side of town. And so how that one little dinky street got called Roosevelt, I'll never understand.
Yeah.
Well, there are two Roosevelts.
Well, yeah, there was.
Well, and there's a Beverage Street, too. We don't know what was planned for that. Who knows? So.
Michael?
I just had a thought sitting here looking at the unimproved alley that runs through there. Is that still city property, Justin, to the north and south of that unimproved alley that parallels the railroad track?
Are you talking about the east side of Wymet property or the west?
Be on the
Yes,
west
the
side.
east side between them and the railroad track, there's an unimproved alley that is part of this. So to the north and south of that unimproved alley, is that still city? Yeah. So here's the unimproved alley, so south and going north.
So that would be part of the vacated.
Right,
area.
but is this still city here? Is that,
I'm not sure if that's continues. I don't think anything's ever been there at all.
well, the only reason I
Yeah.
asked, it just kind of occurred to me, if we ever wanted to put some kind of a greenway or something going north, would that be the place to do it? And if we give it up,
It's a good question. Yeah, I didn't review that alley as part of it. I was just looking at the east-west roads, so that's a good catch.
And I would say the most important thing to us is Roosevelt and Beveridge. So
The two
even if there was any
dogs.
question about the 16-foot alley, I think we would want to proceed with at least getting rid of those streets in the middle of
Because
our
wasn't there
parking
some
lot.
talk about putting a bike path or something up where you live, Diane?
So what it appears to me in the petition is they've requested that it be vacated between lots 3 and 4. And so that would be only the areas between lots 3 and 4. And
Which is Beveridge Street.
which is, well, the portion of Beveridge Street that lies between lots 3 and 4.
Right.
And then between lots 8 and 9, which is Roosevelt Street, between the lots, so it wouldn't extend eastward
To the
past
alley.
Lot 3 or past Lot 4. So whatever public way was previously reserved along the railway there would still be preserved regardless of this vacation of the area between lots 3 and 4. Does that, so when they vacate it, the lines will be redrawn from the corner of Lot 3 north to the corner of Lot 4.
And if that's the way that we want to go, I have an earlier version of the ordinance I'll hand out that I think is more generalized in that sense, because the version that you have, I think, includes that 16-foot alley to the back. So
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind me approaching, I'll hand that.
Heavens, no. And I just raised the question.
Sure.
That's all. I have no dog in this fight at all. I just, if it
But
was
this
ever
ordinance contemplates
possibility to
just
put a greenway
those
going
streets,
north, that
correct?
maybe you couldn't even have a greenway there because it's so close to the tracks. I don't know.
Well, you also got the lumberyard then, right?
Well, that's why I
And
asked
it's
what's
not-
north and south of that.
So council has handed me an ordinance where effectively subparagraph A says Beveridge Street between lots 3 and 4, and Roosevelt Street located between lots 8 and 9. So that public way ends where 8 ends and 9 ends and
Understand.
doesn't extend to, I would say, the 16-foot.
So is the
That is along
ordinance
the-
in front of us just for Beveridge and Roosevelt Streets and not that alley?
Yeah, well, we had interpreted that 16-foot alley as being part of all the streets, but if it's not,
But I don't
We
see
had-
that on this ordinance.
yeah. So there was an earlier version of the ordinance that I had shared with Justin before we had our surveyor give us a legal. And it just references the two streets, and it doesn't have a legal description other than a generalized one saying those two platted streets between these lots in this plat. So that's what I've just handed your council, and it has a more generalized exhibit. We got a more detailed exhibit from our surveyor, so that's the one that I had given the clerk.
And that's Exhibit A, correct?
Correct, yeah.
It's a legal description of the property you want vacated.
It is, yeah.
And you're
Now,
saying-
that included that
included-
16-foot alley.
Oh, got it.
If for some reason council doesn't want to include that, I think we use my earlier version that just references the two streets.
In the legal description.
Yeah, well, the legal description becomes really simple. It's just these two streets as shown on the plat in between these two
Yep.
lots, which can be drawn out by a surveyor.
You guys understand that? Do you have any concern about the 16 feet being vacated as well, the alleyway that runs parallel to the tracks? Would you prefer that just the streets that are bordered by the north and south lots and leaving the 16 feet open? I don't even know if that alleyway is open all the way down to where you could even do that.
And that's why I asked
Yeah.
the question. If, we may not want it now, but at some point, 50 years from now, there may be some reason to want it. And it's not that I don't want them to have it, but if that whole alley is existing and we do want to use it in the future, let them use it. But
I mean, it looks like it extends both ways
Yeah, it
on
does.
either side of their properties, so.
It does, but
You would be
maybe at some
affecting all
point, it may,
properties along
it's like,
there.
remember the promenade along the lakes? If one
Right.
lot owner has vacated that, that promenade is shut down.
Right,
So
so I
that,
can,
that's my only thought.
that's what so I can see what you're saying, Mike. It wouldn't make any difference to what they want to do.
Yeah, they could still use it, have at it, but at least the city would have it in their hip pocket if ever.
So what's your preference?
Well, I guess I would prefer that the city keep the alley based on the bicycle paths that we are currently trying to do. I think this might make a good addition to it. Maybe something we didn't realize we had that would be free of traffic. But to Mike's point, let them use it until such time when we decide that we would like to do that. And unless you want to give it back when.
Well, you know, when you go north of Roosevelt Street there,
Yeah,
then you're running into that lumber yard, and they run it right straight out to the railroad track there.
But it may not be theirs.
And
Well, it
not
may
be.
have been vacated. That's the whole point. We don't
it
know.
may have been.
They-
Yeah.
Maybe some research from Justin. My red flag was he wasn't sure when he looked at it. He said, I'm not sure north-south, or maybe comments now to give us that information. It seems like your priority is the two, Beveridge and Roosevelt, and Justin, it looks like you have a comment or two.
I definitely agree with the decision to keep it as city property for now. I don't think it's likely that we'd ever use it for pedestrian way, just because we're looking at more of the east side of 15 to get people north and south. We have a relatively less traveled road, Park Ave, that we can use for bikes and pedestrians. But I think it would make sense, just long-term, to keep that as an alleyway, and it's not going to negatively impact their request. So we could ask them to amend their attachment to reflect the request for the east-west roads.
And I think that attachment is that. It was an earlier version of the ordinance I'd done that didn't.
So let's go ahead and open, let's do the public hearing portion of this, then we'll come back and have a decision. Remember, this actually goes, there's 2 readings, so, you know, we can kick the can for another 2 weeks if you're not sure. But I just want to open the meeting to the public and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition as presented. Okay. Hearing none, is there anyone wishing to speak against the petition as presented? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting and throw it back to council. You've heard from the city planner. It seems to me like the nod seems to be to allow them to vacate the 2 streets, but for the city to maintain or keep ownership of the north-south alley. So, and to do that, I think we could approve it tonight based on the description that you've got.
Yeah, so I just want to point out a few subtle things. The owners of that property are Wymet. It's a platted public way. They're the owners of that property. The plat just reserved a right for the public to be able to use that portion of that property as a public way. So the city doesn't own that alley. That is owned by those in the plat, which in this case it's Wymet. And so it's their property. It's just, since it was platted, however long ago it was platted as a public way, it's always stayed a public way, like Roosevelt Street there and Beveridge Street there. That's always been a public way, but it's owned by them. And I think this ordinance that council's handed me is very sufficient to close it between their lots, what would retain on the plat a public way, that strip along the railroad tracks. It would be until they asked or somebody asked for that, and it'd basically be them or possibly the railroad to be the adjacent landowner that would request for that to be vacated. But I just wanted to be clear that it's their property, and they've just, by virtue of it being platted as a public way back when, it just reserves the right for the public to be able to use it. In this particular case, there's really no way for them to use it, the public currently, because it appears to be very landlocked.
Well, people do use it. I mean, they climb over the railroad track and walk along it to go to Burger King, or to Arby's, I mean.
Well, it could be being used like for pedestrian traffic or whatever, but it appears to be very landlocked, and there's, short of trespassing on the Wymans or trespassing on the railroad tracks, it
Yeah,
appears to be.
Trespass on the railroad.
So,
So if we agree to let them use Beveridge and Roosevelt and keep the public way, they still have access to it, but if it ever comes up 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it's still there, right?
correct. If you vacate between lots 3 and 4 and between lots 8 and 9, then there will not be allowed public use of that portion of their property.
Unless it continues further north or south.
Correct.
That's what I would do.
Will that sufficiently clean things up for you?
Yeah, I think the primary issue is the two streets that are in the middle of our parking lot. Absolutely.
So legal, the motion that you would want us to make on first reading would be not what we're looking at here, it would be the document that you have.
Correct.
Okay, does the ordinance number stays the same? You're looking at 2023-1001?
I'm looking at ordinance 2023-1001 with a simpler description of just vacating Beveridge Street between lots 3 and 4 and Roosevelt Street between lots 8 and 9.
Yeah, they don't have any.
The only
Thank you.
difference is page 7. That was the only place I saw on here that even had the alley right there. Other than that, there's.
They say alley in the language.
So
too
it
on
just
this.
doesn't have that extra paragraph.
Right there, yeah.
Well,
Okay, so,
I'm appreciative of what they did. They went and got a very good meets and bounds legal description from, a surveyor and did a great job. If they wanted us to consider vacating all of it, including the alley. But if they're willing or currently asking for it just to be vacated between lots 3 and 4 and 8 and 9, then this is the correct ordinance that you would want to pass.
It's just missing.
it's first reading. The hard copy presented by the petitioner, ordinance number 2023-1001, I move to approve this as presented to council, hard copy, on first read.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion?
And that's for the two streets,
Yeah.
between lot 3 and 4.
Yes.
So, just point of clarification, the original ordinance that was advertised is not the same as this one. Does that require that we revisit, or does this amendment, if you will, or this change in the exhibit impact the public hearing?
I think they're asking for less than what they advertised they would be asking for.
Right, I'm just asking a question.
So I
Are we
think
good?
this is sufficient
All right,
notice
fair
to
enough.
anybody that would be aggrieved or remonstrating that what was specifically sent out was more than what is now being considered to be approved. So I'm fine with it moving forward.
All right,
with
If
what they
Diana
covered.
made the second agrees, I will add to my motion that this hard copy, 2023-1001, as amended at this meeting. Okay, so I'll add that, if you're okay with that. I'm just saying, it seems to me like they're saying, well, you don't like this one, so we'll give you the other
Okay,
less
but
of a version.
What we want to amend is not the hard copy, what we want to amend the publicized copy.
Well, or no, okay.
What he's saying is that is the amendment.
This is as
This is
amended.
as the amendment, yeah. Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Legal, you okay with that or
Well-
not?
Hang on.
Do you have a copy of the advertisement by any chance? Or was it advertised in the paper?
Yeah,
Because I don't remember the meets and bounds.
no, what was advertised was
Just, yep, was the, like you have it in here.
You know, those ones that they're talking
Mhm.
about, those are probably when they first.
And Scott, if you're uncomfortable, I can
Oh, yeah.
withdraw and then,
Personal home was.
Yeah, so what they're requesting meets what the notice of public hearing did. They're requesting to vacate portions of the public way between lots 3 and 4 of Beveridge Street and between lots 8 of 9 of Roosevelt Street, which is exactly what this hard copy ordinance does. You just have a different thing on board pack that includes an Exhibit A, and they're no longer requesting that. So what they've presented in hard copy form matches what they advertised as public notice and appears to be even the majority of what they request for vacation that's been on file with the planning commission that Justin's had.
I think your original motion that we approve the hard copy and seconded is, after discussion with the city attorney, is fine, because it's less prescriptive than the original.
Sure.
And we can come back, we got another hearing.
second reading.
Yeah.
So
So,
I'll withdraw then as amended. You're okay? And just my
All
original
right.
motion like the mayor said.
all right, anybody got anything to say? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, and we'll convene back here at the next meeting, which is the, today's second, 16th, is that right?
Yeah, 14th,
No, it's the 16th, Monday the 16th. All right, and that for second reading, second and final reading. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for your patience.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item number 2. This would be the general salary ordinances. Actually, tonight, we're going to consider the general salary ordinance, police salary ordinance, fire salary ordinance, and the elected officials ordinance. The general police and fire have to be approved by November 1st, whereas the elected salary ordinance doesn't have to be approved to the end of the year. Doesn't mean we can't do it all at once. I just want you to be aware of that. I also want to go through the IC code that talks about the setting of salaries. Remember, the salary ordinance is a guide. It is the maximum amount allowed. This is not a budget. This is just simply the maximum amount allowed for each of these prescribed positions in the ordinance. So, just as a reminder, the city's legislative body, that's you, shall by ordinance fix the annual compensation of all elected city officials. So that's your role and responsibility. You're setting those salaries. The city executive shall fix the compensation of each appointive officer, which means the department heads, deputies, and other employees of the city. The legislative body may reduce, but may not increase any compensation fixed by the executive. This section does not apply to compensation paid by a city to members of police and fire departments. So the mayor can set the salary of the of the appointed official, i.e. the department head, even if he is a police or fireman, but not the members of the police and fire department. Notwithstanding, the city clerk may, with approval of the legislative body, fix the salaries of deputies and employees appointed under the statute. So it just gives you understanding of how the statute reads and what roles and responsibilities are there. To that end, I know we had a little hiccup getting the salary ordinance out. It was by mistake. I think they did get out Friday afternoon, a little beyond our normal deadline. And then we've had actually 2 revisions, one that was sent out today, and then there's one that Denny's going to pass out on the fire ordinance, fire salary ordinance. And when we get to that, I'll talk about that change. So let's start with the general salary ordinance.
Thank you.
So what went out today?
This morning was an update to the general.
The general salary ordinance. Yeah, not this one.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into the fire in a
All
minute.
updated in board pack.
Board pack is accurate on the general salary ordinance.
Right, and that's what I've been going by, so I.
Yep.
So just to be clear, the update today to the general, was it any different from the one that was sent out late Friday?
The one that was sent out this morning was the updated one for the deputy clerk position that Lynn asked for a different amount of.
And again, it's by statute. Lynn has the authority to set that. And there was an error that didn't get updated. So the only thing that was changed was that. So that's what came out today, and that's reflected on here. So before Denny gets started, I just want you to remember what we talked about this year. What my role was to look at a general across-the-board 3% increase. But as we have done in the past, we review salary surveys from AIM and like communities, Class 2 cities, and look at the wages. And if we have wages that are below, I know Jennifer did this in the past with the salary committee, trying to true up the salaries to keep them on par with salary surveys, the AIM salary survey, as well as the Class 2 cities, 2 and 3 cities surveys. So with that, that's what is presented here today. If they were within that range, this will reflect a 3% increase. If it was below, it will be a larger increase. Denny?
Yes, so what I did was I compared all of our positions across the board in every department with 19 other communities that had a population between 10,000 and 20,000 and were considered Class 2 cities. So that was the most.
Class 3.
Sorry, Class 3 cities. That was the most fair way that I could find to get as close to comparable as what we can. There's a million different ways that you can look at a salary survey and a salary study. But that was just the most fair approach that I could find. So on the general salary ordinance, the biggest majority of all of our positions, you guys had spot on. They were in real good shape. There were a few positions that were a little bit lower than what we would like to see them, and below the average of those 20 cities. The majority of those being our admin positions, our admin assistants, there was four ladies in the clerk's department that were under average that we give a considerable bump to. Who else we got?
A couple of our electricians, I think.
Oh, yeah, electricians. The supervisor at the Parks Department, we gave a little bit higher bump to. They were actually making the same or less than the people that they were supervising.
And I think at the street department, we did the same with the assistant. superintendent, maybe?
Yes, the superintendent's assistant was below average, so we gave them just a little bit higher bump than the 3%. And then also laborers, they were a little bit below average, so we bumped them up just a little bit more than the 3. And then with wastewater, is mostly just the supervisors. We're all a little bit lower than what we would like, so we tried to bump them up just a little bit more than that 3%.
This year, this is 25 full, but it's right behind it. It's not a line.
All right, questions?
Denny, I do have one.
Yes.
On the IT governance committee, is that still paid as a stipend, a 5,000 stipend, or has it been added into salaries?
Okay, so the way that position has been done is there were 3 members, I believe, that was added into their job description, so their wages got
2
adjusted.
years ago.
2 years ago, when Jennifer was here. So their wages reflect that stipend, so they don't get paid a stipend on top. There is one person on the committee that still gets that stipend, and it's because we didn't want to add that duty into that job description, because if we ever have to hire another person to backfill that position, it's not entirely related to IT. So he just has, right now, he has a skill set that we really use a lot, and that's why he still makes the stipend.
Denny, that related to her question, the up to 5,000, each one of those members stipend or in their salary, it started out at 5,000 or was it less? What is it now?
I am not sure.
It's not a stipend, it was, their job description was expanded,
Right.
and the 5,000 was added to their salary.
Okay.
So there's not a stipend in the mayor's assistant, the controller, the systems controller, at the police department, and the GIS coordinator. The IT governance role is in their salary, and it's part of their job description. And as Denny mentioned, we did not want to put the IT piece in the aviation. Nick King, who's very talented in IT and has done a great job, but we didn't want that IT in his job description, because if he would leave, we're not going to base hiring someone on their IT skills.
Right.
It's based on their aviation management skills. As Denny said, we just happened to get an aviation manager who's got excellent IT skills. So we didn't want to change the job description and left the stipend there. That's why it's still listed in the salary ordinance. It's for that one position.
But Mayor, couldn't that be said for anybody that is on that governance committee? If you have, if a current member of the committee and they leave, and you hire someone to take their place that doesn't have the credentials for the IT
No,
governance.
that's why it's in their job description.
Those positions are mainly IT focused.
Those are IT
So that's going to
positions.
be somebody. who has that background.
Whereas the aviation manager is not an IT position. Communications director, systems administrator, and GIS coordinator, we
Those are
all
technical
require
based
that they have
positions.
that skill set. So that's why that's part of their job. And if they leave, they will be replaced with someone that has an equal skill set. And part of their job description is to be on the IT governance committee.
But if you hire somebody for the GIS job and they're really good at it and you want to hire them, but they don't have the IT skills, but you have somebody in another department that does,
Well,
wouldn't you take that person and then give them the extra money?
part of the job description to hire is that they have those skills.
The job is not for the GIS technician, it's the GIS supervisor. So it's the
I'm just trying
GIS,
to understand.
the GIS manager is the one who's on the governance committee. The GIS technician is not. The GIS manager, in order to have that position, has to be more technology sound than other people. Those positions that we talked about are 90% technology-based positions. The skills that they have to have are, and the duties that they do are
Okay.
technology-based. That's why they are on the IT
That's
governance.
part of their job description.
Okay. Another question, the only other question I have is, it says in the description not to exceed amount. So should that be changed or amended, or, because if it's in their salary and they're subject to the 3% this year, 3% salary increase, that 3% is going to add to that 5,000, but it says in the ordinance not to exceed 5,000.
That stipend does not apply to the people who have it in their job description now. The stipend only applies to one person.
There's no stipend in the other 3 jobs. There's no IT stipend.
So hypothetical scenario that I
Yes,
think
sir.
might help clear this up.
Yeah.
Let's say Nick moves on.
Correct.
He's no longer the airport manager. We
Right.
hire his replacement, who's
Yep.
not going to be on the IT governance committee. The line that speaks about it could essentially be removed
Correct.
from the salary ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, unless they appoint somebody else, and it's not part of their job
Unless the same
description.
scenario.
That's exactly
comes
Right,
right.
and then,
Right.
yeah, if
Yes.
Be right back
if
where you
it
are.
ends up being
Yeah.
somebody else without the technology base, then the stipend will still be there for them.
Right, right.
So basically, I think the confusion is just back to when we very originally thought about these positions, and we just thought of them as being a stipend for those 4 people. But then as you relooked at job descriptions, which is your prerogative, because you're the one that sets those for these people, you saw that that was part of the job for those 3 people. And left
Well,
it
there was concern at the time about the stipend.
Yeah.
And if you all remember when we did our organizational review, Baker Tilly, the highest priority in that study was to establish an IT governance committee.
Yeah.
We established a committee. Their role was to govern how IT would be implemented within the city. And as they got together, they felt like rather than going out and hiring someone, you'll notice in the mayor's line, there is a IT coordinator, and I believe it's about an $88,000 position. And the IT governance committee felt like because these 3 positions especially are embedded in IT in our community, in our city, the communications piece, the systems administrator piece, and the GIS piece. Those people are embedded in the IT in our community, in our city, and know what's necessary, and felt like they could govern and manage IT better than someone from the outside. And at the time, it was costing us $20,000 as opposed to $88,000 for a IT administrator. And they have done a marvelous job. I won't tell you tonight everything they've done, but with regards to cybersecurity, network administration, our fiber, our backups, knock on wood, we have advanced and have just been at the top of the class in municipalities as far as our IT department and what we've been able to accomplish. So that all started from the Baker Tilly study and has just advanced from that.
Where is our communications director listed? 'Cause I don't
Well, it's
see-
called the mayor's assistant.
Okay, and then the administrative assistant would be the
Yeah.
person that prepares the board pack and stuff. Okay, got it, okay. So we just have a
The
different,
communications piece is part of her job description.
okay.
It may not be reflected in the title, but that's her job
Okay, I
description.
just wanted to make, I thought that was where it was, but I wasn't
I
positive.
appreciate the explanation, I
Yeah.
really do, because it was a little, to me, a little nebulous, and I was trying to grasp. I've had to reread this thing a couple times, and I think I got it.
And you know, Josh, to answer your scenario, if the aviation manager would move on and take his IT skills with him and the new aviation manager didn't, we would have a line in the salary ordinance to find someone else to be able to fill that fourth position. And the IT committee, the size of that committee was part of the discussion from the beginning, because everybody seems to bring a little bit different realm to it. In fact, as a council member, maybe you could get involved, because I know you have a very broad knowledge of IT and so forth.
I don't know about broad.
I'd just just give you a hard time, but again, I think the fact that there's a stipend in there will give us that flexibility.
It pays $2,000.
And I've been so focused on the actual salaries and all your studies, and thank you for all the work you did, by the way, because that research really helps us make good decisions. I forgot to ask, we're leaving insurance premiums the same, is that correct?
Insurance premiums went up.
No, they went
Or
up.
did they go up a little
They
bit?
went up a little bit.
Okay.
We as a city will still pay 95% of the premium, and the
Okay,
employee
that's
pays
what we're leaving
5%.
the same.
We will leave that the same, correct.
Okay,
The dental and vision stayed the same.
okay.
Danny, thank you for your explanation and working with me
Yeah, absolutely. sir.
on this. I really do appreciate it.
Anytime.
If there aren't any more questions, I'd make a
I
motion.
do have one more, actually.
Okay, go
Yeah.
for it.
So this doesn't have to do specifically, I guess, with the salary ordinance. It's just more of a general curiosity. I know we've worked really hard the last few years to kind of bring everything up to where we felt was a really appropriate level. How has employee retention been over the last couple of years? Are
Thank you
we
for asking that.
really staffed up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I just sent an email out last week to our department heads that the average turnover rate for a government municipality is about 20%. So far this year here in the city of Warsaw, we are under 5%. We're at 4.8%.
Excellent.
We've lost 12 people, and 4 of those were retirements. And I don't include retirements against us because I think that's something to celebrate, not hold against us. So we're under 5%, and that's a big part from what you guys have done with wages, and also what our department heads are doing to build a culture that people want to be here with us and not leave us.
Sure. Maybe a little bit to do with the leadership program, too.
Maybe a little bit.
Don't leave yourself out.
Denny, I have a question concerning the
Yes.
deputy treasurer's job or salary. Is it, I know you don't set it, clerk treasurer has asked us for a certain amount. Is that in keeping with the 3% across the board that we have been directed to try to maintain?
That position is a little bit over the average of what the other 19 cities are. But I guess you can ask Lynn what her reasoning is by what she wants, but she asked for it to be a little bit more than that 3%.
Do we know how much more? How much is a little?
8%.
8% over, okay. Then I would ask the clerk treasurer a couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to know why you're proposing an increase that's almost 3 times the increase proposed for every other city employee.
3
And
times.
do the deputy clerk's wages fall below the average of any other deputy clerks across the state of Indiana in cities the size of Warsaw? And are we asking the deputy clerk to perform duties that are outside their job description and scope of work?
Well, earlier this year, I had everybody look at their job descriptions and their duties, and that hadn't been done since 2017. So after everybody did that, everybody had more duties than what they had 5 years ago. So I started comparing stuff. I asked Danny to help me, and he came up with some, I think it was like national estimates of what that job is. So I looked at those national estimates compared to their current salaries, and then plus the 3% increase, proposed 3% increase, and this is what I came up with because of the expanded duties. And so the other positions in my office range from 7.5% to over 10%.
Now, when you say they're expanded duties,
Well,
Is-
their duties, updated duties since 2017 that
Okay.
have been added to their plates.
my question is, are they outside their job description? Or are
Well,
they-
right now,
or-
they're outside their job description, because I haven't seen a new written job description from when I had them updated.
Are they being asked to do things that they have not been asked to do before?
Well,
And
it's-
I'm not saying,
It's not being asked, it's just that we have extra stuff that comes into us all the time, and this is just the extra stuff that has come in since 2017.
Well-
And we can't say, no, we're not gonna do it, because we need to do it.
please bear with me as
That's fine.
I go over with
Okay.
a bit of our history. And please, don't take anything I say here personally. I like the treasurer, I like her deputy. They were on my winning trivia team. And I hope they'll return to help defend our title next year. When I came to the council almost 8 years ago, we had a problem across the board with unbalanced wages. We had employees who were doing well, some say too well. On the other hand, we had employees who qualified for food stamps, believe it or not. All because we didn't have direction as to how to set wages. Some called it a good old boy system. I remember Councilor Gross stating it was like akin to throwing darts at a dartboard. Nobody liked it. At the time, our human resource director, Jennifer Whitaker, had been working to classify employees and refine job descriptions. Council, who recognized how important this was to the morale of our employees, worked closely with Jennifer to shape the system we have today. The system is based on the job description for which the employee is compensated. For instance, the street department, an employee with a CDL in a job that requires him or her to drive is compensated better than an employee who does not drive, at least not a heavy truck. Each year, the job for which they are hired is reevaluated to make sure they continue to be fairly compensated. The system works well. We have, over the past 3 or 4 years, had to make adjustments, some mid-year. 3 come to mind. 1, we've talked about extensively here tonight already about the IT Governance Committee, giving them an additional $5,000 stipend. This was done because we're asking employees with certain talents and abilities to help prevent and protect the city from cyber criminals. This was not in their current job description. They have not only increased our cyber security, they have saved the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars by guiding the city towards consolidation of equipment and software. They've more than paid for themselves. The second, as you remember, Warsaw PD was having a great deal of difficulty maintaining the amount of officers we need to keep Warsaw safe. This was a market problem we had to correct if we were going to keep our citizens safe. This also met our objective, and today we are at near full capacity. And third was a clerk for the Warsaw PD who had been asked to and developed skills over the course of her duties to maintain equipment and procedures. But this alone was not enough to adjust her pay. The second piece of the puzzle was that she had been offered a much higher wage for her skills. Her loyalty allowed the city to retain her services by offering a compromise. All 3 were thoroughly thought through and have been beneficial to the city, and I would do them again. But for me to vote to raise a wage above the ordinary, I must be presented with data from HR showing to me, as a city, we are out of line with communities of close to or equal size to Warsaw. Proof we cannot retain quality employees deserving the citizens of Warsaw. Or if we ask an employee to develop a higher skill or ability that elevates their position. I see none of those here. The deputy clerk is paid slightly above state average. Her duties are comparable to cities of like size, and we're not asking her to obtain additional skills elevating her position. The council this past 8 years has been focused and disciplined. This has helped Warsaw stay competitive in the areas of wages and morale. We must maintain our focus on these higher goals. To lose focus will only sow seeds of discord. For me, this vote is not about one employee. It's about a system in place, a good system, and whether or not we abandon it. We must ask ourselves, have we really put those days of throwing darts behind us? Now, having said all that, I applaud the clerk treasurer for her willingness to stand up for her subordinates, and I'm willing to compromise a bit. You've all heard me sing the praise of our clerk treasurer and her deputy concerning the quality of work they deliver. This is demonstrated through glowing reports we get back from the State Board of Accounts during our yearly audit. The SBOA teams actually vie among themselves to come to Warsaw because our books are so clean. Their words, not mine. I wish a bonus could be given. A one-time bonus that recognizes excellent work. This is where it does the most good. But I'm told bonuses are not allowed by law. Therefore, I'm willing to offer this. I would move to amend and adjust the clerk treasurer's request for her deputy to an additional 1% above the customary 3% wage increase this year and bring it to 4%. And that's all I have.
So could I respond to some of those?
Sure.
As far as, you were talking about the CDL and certifications and whatever pay, especially pays other places get, or other departments get. So we don't get that. We can qualify and get certified. Like, I'm a certified municipal clerk. Kelly has enough points to be a certified municipal clerk, but she hasn't applied for it yet. And we do that, we get the points through continuing education, but then yet again, we don't get any stipends or especially pay for that. So is it required by law? No. Is it required by me? I appreciate it. I'm glad Kelly wants to go to those continuing education classes with me and get the continuing education as laws change, as procedures change and whatnot. It helps us keep up current so we can get those good audits. And so we can get our objectives of making sure that we get everything done in a timely manner as required by the State Board of Accounts and the DLGF. She's a big part of that.
Well, and I applaud her for doing that. I really do. But I also look at that as she is bettering herself. We, all of us have not asked her to do that, but she has bettered herself, and it will pay off someday. But I also view that as like somebody on the street department who doesn't have to drive a heavy truck going out and getting a CDL license. They're not compensated for that CDL license until they get that position. And they are bettering themselves, putting themselves into a position that someday will pay dividends for them. And again, I applaud them for that and would be looking at them to be my next person to move up. But I don't think at this point it should be compensated for.
Okay,
But
I have a
not
couple.
everybody that works at the street department is required to have a CDL. They offer to go get their CDLs. Kelly has offered to go to classes so she can get her certification.
Yeah, and I'm saying it's pretty much the same, yeah.
I have a couple comments. We, being a part of the wage committee for a number of years, ran into problems with both elected officials' salaries, especially in the clerk treasurer's office and with the deputy clerk treasurer, because the job descriptions are not equal across cities. And we found many cities that only had a deputy treasurer. We found cities that only had a deputy clerk. We found when we called, we actually one year called all these people. They reported people on as deputy clerk treasurers, but they were not. They were not fulfilling those roles. And so we did not go by looking at the wage in some of these positions. So we did not go by what we found by the surveys. We tried to look more at national, what was coming in and what the Wagner study recommended for us. So in looking at the current request, if we back the salary out, and if you look, if you think on the bottom of the page, that the average for the deputy clerk treasurer last year was $61,314.87. And our deputy clerk treasurer was only making $59,529. If I take what Lynn is currently asking for, and I just do 97% of it without the 3% raise on it, then if we put Kelly's wage in, like if we would have trued it up last year, it would have come out with what she's asking for at $62,362, which is only $1,000 difference. Then we also tried to look at like cities, because when you can look at cities by population, but I can tell you, looking at the cities on this list, that they do not have the projects going on that we have going on. And especially from what we saw just this last week with Zimmer Biomet, making their commitment here to the city for years to come. Every time we do, different tax abatements, we do different bonds, we do different things for building. Warsaw is having a lot of growth. I have friends in governments to cities immediately to the east of us and to the west of us. To the east of us, that deputy clerk treasurer last year was making $67,662. The city, they are growing as we are. They have brought in some big industries, and they've had some of these big bond issues and things to look at. The city directly to the west of us, where I grew up, I've had many people comment, I wish we were in Warsaw. I wish we were experiencing the kind of growth that you had. I wish we were doing the things that you were doing in Warsaw. We're falling way behind. And that wage here, again, is much lower. So I don't have a problem with the department head asking for a wage that they feel reflects what the person is actually doing, the quality of work they're doing, especially compared to people around us. And we did the exact same thing with the wastewater department this year, and with a couple of positions in street and with a couple of positions in the park. And we did not go with what the survey said, but we went by what the department had recommended and what they felt was a comparable wage and a competitive wage for out in the city. So I personally don't have a problem, and I don't feel like we're deviating from what we've set. I think we're going right along with what we've always done every time, because every time we ran into this problem with this, and we tried to use the best information that we would have, but we also tried to look at those cities. And if you'll, several of the cities don't even have a deputy clerk treasurer listed, or they didn't list it. So it's really hard to get a good wage average for this one just by looking at the state. So that's where I come out with wanting to respect the department head like we did, and she's not a department head, she's an elected official. So we're respecting the elected officials' request for her people, just like we did several department heads. So I'm okay with what is being requested. So that's where I stand.
And I would piggyback off of that, much of the same as what Diane said, and I kind of looked critically at the different cities, and I do know, I think we have a lot more projects going within our city perhaps than some of the other ones do. And just having talked with Lynn on different occasions, I am comfortable with the fact that if she feels that is warranted for the level of work that's being done, I am comfortable with it. And again, as Diane said, we had other positions that were above the 3% raise. And maybe that was only bringing them up to the standard, but I think some of them maybe are still a little bit over. So again, I am very comfortable.
All of those were below the average. Everybody who got more than 3% was below average. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay.
Nobody who was above average got anything more than 3%.
I appreciated Jack's comments, and again, trying to stay true to what we've been doing, but I'm in agreement with Diane. there are sometimes difficult ones, like this one, there's 7, almost half the positions, we can't even look at it. And then your 2 examples have 100 fewer employees. So there's just, sometimes there are a lot of variables. And then you add the fact that I spent with the clerk treasurer, it was almost 2 hours, and we went at it back and forth, and I greatly appreciated her willingness to share the added duties and responsibilities for this job. I told her that, again, the grid and how we've been doing it is something that I really wanted to stay true. Diane's comments, you're helping because you're right. The recent history, we've had trouble in her department trying to figure things out and make some corrections, and by not making the correction, this one can appear to be much larger maybe than what it could be if we had been.
If we
Is
had
it-
corrected it along the way.
Yeah, what you said, and I do remember those discussions, and I think that's why Lynn said, Jeff, when you get in here, you've been on the wage committee, I want to talk to you about that position, so, but it is a lot, and it does go against, Jack, great comments, it does go against the standard 3, but again, Lynn has been saying that this needs corrected and has been for years, so that's something I think we all need to consider, and I think you are considering it. So, Diane, is that okay, I don't want to say anything.
You may
out of
say
turn.
whatever you like
All
to,
right.
Jeff.
All right. I wanted to try to stay true to you, and I was rambling there, and because you and I spent a lot of time on the wage committee over the years.
Well, I appreciate what you all have said. And considering this as a correction, because it didn't hit me that way. I would reconsider what is going on with this. I take it this is a like any other things, any other people that we have had to correct their wages for one reason or another. Usually the market dictates it. I would consider making this a one-time correction as well. We call it a one-time correction, but we don't know what's going to happen 3 years from now. We always get done with these things, patting ourselves on the back, saying, "Hey, we're finally there, right?"
keep
But
thinking
that ain't going to happen because it changes every year. The market changes every year. We got to change with it.
Diane, you were talking numbers. Are you satisfied with what's been proposed or not? I couldn't catch you as you were talking.
Yeah, I am. I mean, actually, I think she could have asked for more. So I'm satisfied with what she asked for.
Okay.
I just want to make one comment. There was a reference earlier about throwing darts. I take offense to that. We've had we've had HR directors who have battled this for years and years and years. Tonight's a perfect example. I'd say we're throwing darts tonight a little bit, but sometimes that's the only way to get this thing done. Denny has come, and I will defend him for continuing the system that Jennifer instituted, utilizing not only an external salary survey, but also the salary survey of AIM and municipalities, where the majority of job duties line up. So while it seems a little random at times, I would say it's the furthest thing from that. It's very difficult, when you give someone maybe more and when someone's not making enough. And at the end of the day, you want everybody to be happy, and sometimes not anyone's happy. So, let's keep that in mind. This is an art as well as a science from data, and that's my point.
Well, and I'd like to apologize to the mayor if that was offensive. It wasn't intended to be. Like you say, sometimes it just felt so random that we knew there was a better system. And It has been worked on for years, since before I was on the council, and that's been almost 8 years now. So, no offense intended, and I hope you accept my apology.
Well, at the end of the day, I think we're doing a great job. And it's
I
these
do
hard
too.
discussions that we have to have, sometimes publicly, that get us to that point. So there's no harm, no foul. All right, let's get back to the salary ordinance. Again, this is the first reading of the general salary ordinance. Are there any other issues in the general salary ordinance that need to be addressed before we consider the first reading?
Mayor, I would just say that of all the business that we conduct, this is probably one of the hardest pieces of legislation that we have to deal with. And sometimes emotions can get involved, but I think at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We all want the city to succeed. Everybody has worked hard on this. HR, mayor's office, council, clerk's office, and I think, like you said, we talk, and I think we do a great job. We do the best job that we can.
Well, the reason it's so hard is that we're only as good as our employees.
That's true.
So with that, is there a motion? Or is there consideration to be given to ordinance 2023-1003?
I'll make that motion, Mayor. that
And I'll
we-
second it.
That we adopt
On first reading?
on first reading salary ordinance. Now, hang on, I gotta go back up here. 2023-10-03, as presented.
All right, thank you, Mike.
And I'll second it.
All right. Thanks, Jack. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Item number 3 would be the ordinance, the same salary ordinance, only this for the police department. This is ordinance 2024-1004. And Denny?
Yes, so let's see. There are 3 positions that are getting a little bit of a bump above the 3%, and that would be the records clerks, the administrative assistant, and the parking code enforcement. They were all below the average of the other 19 cities, just under, so looking at bumping them to 4% instead of 3.
What were they again, records clerk, and what were the other two?
Administrative assistant.
Administrative assistant and the parking code enforcement.
So since I've been both of those, I think you should, go for that.
I do want to make a statement. There is a mistake on this down at the bottom. I forgot to update the longevity percentages on that first line at specialty pay.
Oh, yeah.
So I will have to get those corrected for the record. It'll be the same way on the fire too. So. Thanks, Chief Mayo. for setting
Can I
that straight.
want to ask a question, it's probably a silly question, but
Yep.
if you don't know the answer, I guess it's not silly. On where it says park, bike, patrol,
Yes.
is that in addition, I assume that that's a sworn officer that's doing that.
Mike, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. We haven't had one since I've been here.
Not
So,
necessarily.
no wonder.
Not yet.
It's not necessarily.
Okay,
We have
so-
officers who are on bikes, but I know we've hired in the past
Yes.
high school or college
Okay.
kids to patrol on bikes. So I assume that's what that's for.
I have not seen it the 2 summers I've been
Is
here.
that,
so.
okay, so if we hire a college student or something, is that a competitive wage when you can go to Walmart for $15?
That's pretty close to, I think, what our lifeguards are making a little
Yeah.
bit more, but it's comparable.
Okay, I just had to ask the question.
I don't know that that's been utilized in the last few years, so, the salary may not be quite up to what it needs to be, but I don't believe that we had a bike patrol officer this year.
My initial reaction was that in addition to their regular salary? But if you're just
Nope.
paying somebody that to ride a bike,
It's an hourly wage.
probably not
I
enough.
think when they've had it filled in the past, it's been like someone who was interested, like in an intern position.
Yeah, it's a long time ago that we had that.
It's been a long time.
Do we seek people out to do that?
I have never recruited anybody for that position. I know that we have positions on all of the salary ordinances that aren't necessarily used, but they're kind of like placeholders for positions that we see that we may need in the future. So that's why I haven't taken any positions off of the salary ordinances. I've left everything on there that you guys had on there prior to me getting here, so.
Do we need to change it or keep it the same or just do away with it or?
I don't know that it's an issue unless you feel that you want to raise it, but if it's really a position that isn't actively being used, I don't know that it's all that critical.
But you can't raise it afterwards.
I want the police chief's input before I'd remove a position from his department.
I would agree with that.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2023-1004 with a correction in the longevity pay.
All
I'll
right.
second that.
All right, thanks, Diane, thanks, Cindy. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Danny, excuse me, what
Yes.
exactly was the
The under,
question with the longevity?
I forgot to update their, it should be the base wage, and then 1% and 2% of the base wage. I'll get that corrected and send you a clean copy, Lynn.
And that's the
It says 1% of base patrol officers. Is that what?
I didn't update the base pay.
He didn't
It's actually
update the base patrol
2439.83.
It's not 2369.
And the 2368.77 was
Here
last
in-
year.
in
The amount,
okay,
the
I
actual
see. It's
amount.
the very first line, all right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
It'll be the
So with
same way
that
on the fire.
correction-
It'll be on the same way on the fire department as well.
With that correction, that'll come back for second reading.
So the motion was to approve it with the
With the-
amendment to the base.
With the correction. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Ordinance 2024-1005. This is the fire salary ordinance. This was passed out tonight. The change that was made was in the biweekly base firefighter wage for the fire chief.
The biweekly rank incentive.
Pardon me, oh, the rank incentive. Got it.
Yeah.
That's where we put that. So let me explain. When we hired the current chief, we offered him the base pay plus the incentive pay plus the longevity pay, which is on a lateral, which is a standard offer. What we found was that the salary ordinance didn't contemplate a lateral movement in someone who hadn't been in the 77 fund for, the way it reads here, if you go down right about in the middle, it said, a lateral transfer from a 77 fund department. He was out of state. He's been well beyond that 77 fund. He did not transfer from that. He, in our opinion, is entitled to longevity pay, but the way the wording is in the salary ordinance, he couldn't do it. So we have to change that. And I didn't want to, we just basically were made aware of that today. I didn't want to change the wording today without going through our attorney, our employment law attorney. So what I proposed was to put enough of a salary in there that would cover that longevity pay and approve that, and then we'd have to go back and amend this with the proper verbiage in here that would allow him to have that longevity pay.
So does this biweekly rank incentive have enough in it that it
Yes.
will cover that?
Yes.
And since we're voting on maximum, that it could possibly be?
Yeah, that's why I raised it
Then we
up.
would-
That's exactly
okay.
why I did it.
Okay, got it.
Everything else is based on the 3%. I don't believe, Denny, do you have any other
Yep,
comments?
everybody is 3% except for the administrative assistant, and that one was a little bit bigger bump because they were below average.
So Scott, it's correct that we can amend an ordinance on second reading, right?
Not necessarily on second reading. That wasn't what, I was going to go ahead and have this approved, and then we would have to check to see if we could amend it yet this year, or if we'd have to wait till early next year to do
Okay,
that.
that's what I wanted to know.
I didn't want to just throw some words in there.
Right.
I mean, because this salary ordinance is descriptive to where this is how longevity pay is contemplated, and right now, it's not. So we
Right.
have to change that, and I want it to be correct.
It's going to take a little bit of time to get that wording correct and get that back
Okay.
from our employment lawyer.
I mean, if it was next week and I started today, we could have had it done, but started late morning today, and I didn't want to shove it in there without having it looked at. So again, the idea was raise that to cover it.
Yeah, I guess I just thought if we had it done in 2 weeks, we've amended ordinances on second reading before, that we could just get it all done, if the employment.
Well, if that's a possibility, we'll certainly do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not saying no.
right,
I
okay.
didn't know that we could do that if we'd have approved it on first reading. We could amend it on second reading.
I don't think you can.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't either. But then after we're done, then the idea is to come back with an amendment. And if we have to wait till next year, make it retroactive to the beginning.
So we
of the
either have to
year.
approve it like this or call a special meeting in order to get it done by
Exact-
November 1st.
exactly.
Got it.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah. The nuts and the bolts are, okay.
All right. So,
Again, there's no other additions or subtractions to this besides that rank incentive and the administrative assistant pay. Everything else is based on the 3% that the mayor recommended.
And Chief, we've got all of your stipends, your specialty pays correct this year. Yay. Okay.
all right, any other questions?
And for the record too, Denny, you need to change the base firefighter
Yes.
bi-weekly wage. You'll do that on this one
Correct.
too? I see that.
So are we going to vote on the amended copy passed out to us rather than what's on board pack?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask too.
Right,
Okay.
the version that was, the hard copy version that was passed out.
The one that was on legal paper.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
And the only difference on that is that
the base
rank
pay.
incentive, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I should say. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-1005 as submitted tonight.
With the base pay
The base
corrected.
pay corrected by the
Yes.
chief. Yeah.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, and finally, the elected official salary ordinance.
Yeah, this is a straight 3% for all positions.
Not much to say on this one.
After you don't tell the other ones, we couldn't stomach changing any others.
All right. Any comments, any final comments, Denny, or questions?
It's probably the earliest we've had it.
I think we did them all last year, right?
Now, we
Once.
did the elected
We did
later
only-
on. That's why I thought I had another month to get this done. Till I got confused with that.
We had it,
Well, it's your
Had them
pleasure.
early before,
I
but
mean, it's your
Yeah.
pleasure.
not always.
no.
And it's pretty simple this year.
We had some bookkeeping to straighten out last time.
Well, I move that we accept ordinance 2023-1006 on first reading.
06, yeah.
And
All right.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Any final comments or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Denny.
Danny, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate the discussion tonight. I knew it was going to be some discussion, and the decision-making, I think the process went well tonight, and I appreciate everybody making their feelings known. So that's how we get things done. All right, any other matters come before the council?
Yes, I would like to mention that in case you have not seen it on TV, heard about it on the radio, or read about it in the paper.
Seen it on the billboard.
Seen it on a billboard. The Warsaw City Slickers won the trivia contest at the annual GOP Young Republicans event. And I want to thank my team, Lynn, her deputy, Joe.
Don't forget Black Sabbath Harlan.
Oh, no, yeah, Black Sabbath.
Metallica.
Harlan. He knows a lot about metal,
Heavy metal.
heavy metal. Jeff Gross, Mike Londaris, and myself, and I think that's everybody, who came from behind in a thrilling win in the last round.
Handily.
Handily.
We won handily.
Handily, yes,
No one was
yes.
even close.
Yeah. It kind of looked like the Colts game yesterday. So,
And not like the.
Did you notice the categories? They were like being the clerk treasurer,
Oh, that's right, you were on the losing team.
being
oh, that's right.
I forgot.
teaching government,
Didn't I ask you to be on our team?
Optometry.
Oh, well.
optometry, working for an orthopedic company,
And heavy metal.
heavy metal.
So are you saying lawyers?
People who
that
grew up
know
in the
none of that stuff?
60s.
What they didn't tell you is that I was responsible for creating all the questions, so
Thanks, Josh.
I got all the kickback.
And he wouldn't give us any of the answers.
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Yes, it was. I hope you're all back next year. You're
right.
all invited back to defend our title.
Any other items to carry forward? All right. Any comments or questions from our visitors tonight? Well, with that, and again, don't rush off. We have something to sign tonight. And ask for a
I'll make a
motion to
motion, we
adjourn.
adjourn.
That was
Thank you.
too slow.
Yep.
That was really good news.